Welcome to 5 Good Minutes.
You're listening to today's inspirational message
with Kurt Bjorklund.
Today, we're beginning a new week of 5 Good Minutes, and it is the day after Easter. And often what happens for people of faith is they gear up for Easter, and then Easter hits, and immediately you kind of move on from Easter. Now, some of that's natural because there's an emotional buildup kind of moving up through the whole Lent season, Holy Week, Good Friday, and then Easter happens. You celebrate the resurrection and you say, okay, on to whatever is next. If you follow a more liturgical calendar, maybe you start looking ahead to Pentecost. But what I'd like to do just for these few minutes each morning, each day, is look at some of the declarations in the New Testament that are reflective of the resurrection. And the first one is in Romans chapter 10, verse 9, where the Apostle Paul says this. He says, if you declare with your mouth Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. So here's an allusion back to the resurrection. If you believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead. So Paul says, here's what it takes to be saved. Now, he has been arguing all throughout Romans about the importance of salvation and the danger that people are in who do not have a sense of saying, I am good on my own. I need something from outside. And here he says, you have to declare verbally Jesus is Lord, which was a fairly radical statement in that culture because to say Jesus was Lord, it was like saying my allegiance is to something other than the emperor or the Caesar that's in charge of our era. And once you said that, you set yourself up as potentially being seen as an adversary of the government, and you could be seen as somebody even likely to be executed. And so this took something more than it takes today to say Jesus is Lord. And then he says, and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead. This was the impetus because once you say Jesus is the Savior, Jesus is the priority, Jesus is divine, kind of all tied up into these statements, it's as if he's saying, you cannot help but declare him Lord. And I can't help but think how often today people will kind of look at this idea of declaring Jesus as Lord and maybe shy away a little bit. You know, it's the moment when you are at work and somebody talks about something that is antithetical to who God is or maybe what Jesus Christ would mean in our lives, and we just shrink back a little, or we don't want to be identified with a Christian group or a obnoxious person maybe who does proclaim faith. But in this era, the people who had this idea of saying Jesus is Lord, they had to put everything on the line. And the reason they were willing to do this is because of their confidence in the resurrection. And I don't know how you have processed the resurrection, but this is probably one of the things that is most helpful to me in my faith is going back and saying, it appears to me that Jesus' grave really was empty and that the only good explanation for this is that he was raised from the dead. And that propels me forward to say, I have confidence in any arena to look at where I am and say, this is something that I know God has done. And so wherever you are today, if you believe the resurrection, then saying Jesus is Lord, standing outright and saying this is my declaration, is the only logical outcome of that belief. And to not declare it with your mouth is in many ways to act as if you don't really believe it in your heart. Because if it is in the heart, it will come out of the mouth eventually. And therefore, not just kind of being bombastic and throwing it out there, but let it be a barometer of how deeply you really believe it, with how willing you are to publicly identify with Jesus Christ. And today is a day where you can say, If I believe it, then I will proclaim it.
Thanks for joining us here today. There's a lot of great content to explore on Orchard Hill Plus and on the Orchard Hill main feed from the weekend. Have a great day.